Welcome back to Spill the Beans podcast. I am so excited to have you here. Let's get into it.
Hey guys, welcome back to my podcast, Spill the Beans. It's me, Beans. And I would just like to start this episode off about saying what I am grateful for. Number one, I'm grateful for you guys who support me, who listen to my podcast, who just give me all of the love. So I'm really thankful for you guys. And number two, what I am grateful for is my health, right? I'm grateful to be healthy. I'm grateful that my friends and my family are healthy. You guys may or may not know this, but I have recently received some unfortunate news about one of my family members. So any healing energy that you guys could send my way would be grateful. Lately, things have been super chaotic and just super overwhelming for no good reason. But I hope you guys take this moment to appreciate and think about what you are grateful for. Just take a moment to really just ponder upon that. Anyways, this week's episode is about intuition, how to identify intuition, how to strengthen intuition, like what even is intuition. That is what we are going to be talking about today. So let's get into it. Number one, what even is intuition, right? It's that gut feeling that you have. It's more of a sensation than anything. It's not driven by logic or really any conscious being. It's a subconscious feeling that you get usually in your gut, right? Usually you feel that in your gut. It can also be known as your instinct or your sixth sense. All of those names can be synonymous with your intuition, right? And your intuition is a skill, right? It's one of those skills that can be strengthened, that can be worked on. So if you're like, well, I'm lacking on my intuition, it's not very good, it's not very accurate, you can strengthen it. You can make it better. And I will also go over some ways on how to strengthen that and make it better. But it's just the ability to understand something without any conscious reasoning is really what that is. It's a subconscious knowing that happens. And then you might ask, why is it even important? And that's a good question. Like, what do you need this for? Number one, it warns you of potential dangers, seen and unseen dangers that may or may not be around, right? The way I like to think of it is, how like animals, there are some animals like spiders that have kind of like that sixth sense where they can see something that's there, but it's not really there. They just have that feeling and it warns them of any potential dangers that are around. That's basically like for us, our intuition, our sixth sense, our instinct, it's there to warn us of potential dangers. So that way we can survive. So that way we can be safe, right? Also, if you do any sort of divination, it can help you learn to interpret the signs from the divine, right? It can help you really strengthen that connection with the divine, hear message clearer and easier. It can help you know when someone's lying to you, keeping secrets. It can help you protect your energy in a sense. So it's useful for many, many things. And you'll hear stories about people who relied on their intuition where it was like they were walking down the street and then they just got this really weird feeling of like, maybe I should go left instead of right. So they went the other way, and it turns out a couple of seconds later there was like a mugger in the other direction, or mothers when they're like, okay, today I just don't feel right, you're not going to school, and so they keep their child home, and it turns out that something happened at the school, there was a shooting or something, and so that sixth sense, that gut, that intuition feeling is there to protect you and the people that you care about. So strengthening it and just really honing in on those abilities can really help you in the long run and the short run. And the next thing is, how do you even identify your intuition, right? Because sometimes it can be hard to identify, okay, what's my intuition and what is just me being anxious? What's just me being scared? What's just me being, super angry or something? And it helps to identify all of the voices in your head, because we all have different voices in our head that tell us different things. We have like self-doubt voices that are always constantly criticizing us. We have voices that are like, okay, they're overly cautious, right? We have the voices that are overly confident. So it helps to learn to identify these voices and where they're coming from. When you have a thought, what is this? Right? Is it coming from a place of anger? Is it coming from a place of fear? Is it coming from a place of sadness? Right? Learning to identify that helps you drown out all of the noise, because your intuition, it's not going to come from a place of fear. It's not going to come from a place of scaredness, right? It's not going to have almost any feeling at all. It's just going to be sort of this knowing, right? It's like, and it almost comes as sort of a suggestion, like you should probably do this instead of that, right? It's almost never like, do this right now or else something bad's going to happen, right? So it's almost like you should probably do this because that doesn't feel right. Vice versa. On the other hand of that, your spirit guides, your deity's voice has the same feeling of like it's just going to be this very calming energy, right? Neutral energy, but that voice will demand. That voice is going to be like, hey, you need to do this right now. And that one doesn't mind telling you what to do, but your intuition is always going to come as a suggestion, right? And it's always going to be like, I can't really identify where this feeling comes from. It's just, I know, right? It's just a feeling. It's just, I know. And it's going to always be hard to identify exactly where it came from. Same with your spirit guides' voices. It's going to be a little bit hard to identify exactly where it came from. But the thing with that one is you're going to know that it came from somewhere outside of you. You're going to be like, this doesn't seem like one of my ideas. This doesn't feel like one of my thoughts. This feels like something that was given to me. So that is something that you should be aware of, just identifying the voices, just identifying the different feelings. And as you get used to identifying it, it'll become easier to identify, okay, this is my intuition, this is my spirit guide, this is just me being anxious, this is me just being a bully to myself, this is me just being angry. So it's one of those things that you have to practice and that you have to work on. One thing that can also help with that is meditation, right? Meditating, just sitting there. And you know how most times people are like, meditate, and the point of meditation is to have no thoughts? Wrong. When you're meditating to work on your intuition, the point of that is to have as many thoughts as possible. Let those thoughts come in and identify them. Be like, okay, this is a thought. What feeling do I get when I get this thought? Where do I feel that feeling at? Let it come, let it go. Next thought comes, do the same thing, and it'll help you identify what exactly you're hearing. Which voice am I hearing? Who am I communicating with? Right? So in those types of meditations, because there are different types of meditations depending on your goal, you want the thoughts to come in because you want to be able to identify them. You want to be able to be like, okay, what sensations I'm feeling? What feelings do I feel? That's the point of that. You can also do this without meditation. You can just do this in your everyday walking around life when you get a random thought looking at someone, or you're just chilling in bed, anything. You can do this while doing anything and just learning to identify the thoughts that come in your mind and figure out what exactly they are. So this is something that you don't exactly have to meditate to do, and you can do it anytime, anywhere, any place. And that's the good news. And the important thing about this is when you're starting to identify your intuition, you want to try and feel exactly where you feel that from, right? It could also help to think about past times when you felt a feeling from your intuition and be like, where exactly did I feel that? And recognizing where that feeling is can help you identify that in the future. Be like, okay, I usually feel this in my gut. I usually feel this in my chest, right? I usually feel this on the back of my neck or something. And learning to identify that feeling can be like, ooh, okay, I have a weird feeling, but I feel it in the back of my neck, and that's usually where I feel my intuition. Let me follow that. So it'll help you in the identifying process. The next part that many people get very curious about is, how do you even trust your intuition? Which is a valid and good question. How does one trust one's intuition? Number one, you have to be able to trust yourself, right? And many people don't trust themselves. And this can be for a variety of different reasons. This could be because your environment, the people who are around you, they are constantly belittling you, speaking down on you, making you feel not good enough, not worthy enough. And so when you're in an environment where everyone's constantly telling you you're not enough, you tend to believe that. You tend to be like, okay, I can't even trust myself because they said that I'm not trustworthy, because they said that I'm not good enough. So you end up having all of this self-doubt, right? So number one, you have to put yourself in an environment that is supportive, that is loving, that is caring. You have to get rid of any negative energy where it's like they're speaking down of you, they're belittling you, because that's only going to lead to you not trusting your intuition, right? Number two, one of the reasons why we sometimes don't trust ourselves is because we are constantly putting ourselves in unsafe environments, being around unsafe people, right? And it's a form of self-sabotage, right? Where it's like we do things that we know we shouldn't do. We hang around people who we know will hurt us, who will abuse us, who will just talk down on us, and we consistently put ourselves in these situations. And when we're consistently putting ourselves in unsafe situations and unsafe environments, we learn that we can't trust ourselves. We learn that at the end of the day, we're always going to do something that's going to negatively impact us. So we can't trust us. So it's a matter of, like I said, being in a safe environment, making sure you can rely and trust on you, making sure that you can take care of your own needs and be like, okay, I'm going to keep myself safe. I'm going to keep myself protected. Because that's part of trusting yourself and loving yourself, right? You can't be your own worst critic. You can't constantly be like, no, I'm stupid, I'm dumb. You have to be like, I'm smart, I love myself, I'm doing my best. You have to speak love and kindness into yourself so that way you are able to trust yourself. Another part of trusting yourself is relying on you and keeping your word, right? A lot of times, and we've all done this, where it was like, oh, I'm going to get started on cleaning at 6. 6 comes and we're like, ooh, actually not feeling like it. So we never do it. We're like, yeah, I'm going to do this at this time. And then we never do it. And if we do that consistently enough with anything, we'll learn that we can't rely on our own word. So we have to start relying on our own word. If we say we're going to do something, especially if it's just us around, if it's not even to anyone else, we have to make sure that we can rely on ourselves. If we're like, okay, I'm going to wash clothes today, let me wash clothes today. Let me make sure that I can rely on me to do the things that I said I was going to do. So that way I can trust myself. So that way I know that I am dependable to me, right? Unless it's like, okay, I'm going to wash clothes today and then something happens and you're like, I don't have that energy, right? I'm just kaput. And then that's understandable. You would be like, I understand, today was a long day, today was a hard day. It just didn't happen, But in the general scheme of things, be able to depend on yourself, be able to depend on your word, even if it's the small things. And really the small things add up to the big things. So the small things are really what matters most of the time. Something else that can really help is journaling, right? Journaling about really the different feelings you feel, right? The different times you did or did not follow your intuition, what happened, what feelings, what sensations you felt, where you felt them. And just taking note of that can really help you in future situations where you're like, okay, what did I feel last time? What happened the last time? And what did I do? So that way I can go forward from there. Practicing mindfulness also is incredibly helpful because mindfulness is the art of feeling the sensations in your body. Just taking in, how does my body feel? What's going on in my body? And so learning to identify the sensations in your body, learning to identify what it is that's going on in you can be incredibly helpful in identifying your intuition. And also just spending time out in nature, in the forest, with animals, that is also incredibly helpful because nature inherently allows you to work on your intuition. And it can also give you a sense of clarity, right? If life is just super overwhelming, chaotic, it's all over the place, spending some time in nature can help bring in some stability, some grounding, some clarity, and having that stability and clarity can help you identify your intuition better. So if you're like, life is all over the place, take a moment, go on a walk, just sit outside for a little bit. Maybe not when it's super uber boiling hot outside, but in the general, spend some time out in nature. It's incredibly helpful. It's incredibly calming. Another thing that can help is interpreting your dream workings, because a lot of messages are given to us through our dreams. One of the most common ways that your spirit guides, your ancestors, anything yourself also will try and communicate with you is through your dreams, because it's easy, right? Like, that's when your subconscious is taking hold. So it's easy to go in there and be like, okay, I have a message that I want to give to you. Let me give it to you in this dream. So trying to keep a dream journal can be incredibly helpful in being like, what's the information that I need to know right now? And there's a book by Matt Arendt called Psychic Witch that has a lot of different ways to practice working on your intuition, different ways to practice working on your psychic abilities. So if you're like, I want to learn how to strengthen my psychic abilities, that's a book that I think is beneficial and would really help anyone. But one of the things that you can do to also help strengthen your intuition is throughout the day, right, throughout the week, ask yourself questions. Be like, should I do this or should I do that, right? And try and see if you feel any feelings. Try and identify what happens. Try and identify what comes first and go with that and see where that takes you, you know? Be like, okay, should I walk or should I take the elevator today? Should I go left or should I go right? Should I go for a walk today? Should I sit here and watch TV? Whatever, right? And do that to try and hone and work your intuition. And you'll see some results start happening. You'll be like, oh, wow, this happened and that happened. So that is just something that you should keep in mind when you're trying to work on your intuition. Another thing that I would like to mention is there are several things that can deplete your intuition, right? Number one, like I said, it's a skill. It needs to be practiced. So if you don't practice it, it's not going to be as strong. But also electronics, TV, right? Being on your phone, that can actually decrease your intuition, right? Because you're focusing on all of these things that are not yourself, right? And it sort of blurs out all of the feelings that you're feeling, right? It makes it kind of hard to feel the sensations in your body when you're constantly being like, let me focus on this other thing, right? Working too much, being incredibly busy can help drain your intuition. And just sometimes because of these things, you just need to take a moment, a pause, right? And be like, let me recenter, let me refocus, let me come back to me, which is why being out in nature is so great, right? That's one of those reasons why being out in nature is so incredibly helpful. Some other things that can decrease your intuition is stress, anxiety, depression, doubt, insecurity. All of these things can really affect your intuition, and you can have these things and still manage to work with your intuition and still have it be pretty solid, right? They just make it harder to identify, right? Because then you have to be like, okay, what is the stress and what is the intuition? What is the trauma and what is the intuition? What is the depression and what is the intuition, right? And sometimes if you're depressed, you don't even want to. You're like, I don't have the energy for it. I don't have the time for it, which is fair, okay? And that's one of those reasons why it's like you have to deal with these symptoms first. You have to be like, okay, let me work on the stress. Let me work on the trauma. Let me work on the depression first. Let me work on the anxiety first. And then try and work on the intuition, right? Because it's hard to have both at the same time. It makes it almost impossible. So you have to do the self-care. You have to do the self-love. You have to make sure you're in a good space mentally, physically, emotionally, in order to really enhance your intuition and psychic abilities. So if you're feeling off, take a moment. Take a moment, focus on you. Do some self-care, do some self-love, Make sure you're in a solid place, because trying to do things when you're not in a solid place, it becomes incredibly hard for no good reason. Also, connecting with your spirit guides and ancestors can help your intuition, right? They kind of go hand in hand, right? When you strengthen your intuition, it becomes easier to connect with your ancestors and spirit guides. When you work with your ancestors and spirit guides, it becomes a little bit easier to work with your intuition. And that's because they work on the same level of you have to go within and you have to be like, let me identify emotions. Let me figure out where this is coming from. Let me listen to the energy that's around me, okay? So they work on the same sense of you have to go within to identify things, which is why both of them go hand in hand. As one increases, the other increases. As one decreases, the other decreases. They have a linear relationship. So do what you will with that information. um, and if you're a crystal person or an herb person, and you're like, well, also I want to do all of these things, but I also wanted some crystals that could help, right? One of the best crystals, in my opinion, to help strengthen intuition is amethyst. I love amethyst. It's one of my favorite crystals. So you could meditate with amethyst. You also have labradorite. You could meditate with that. You could do some crystal grids. I don't do crystal grids. I don't work with crystals too much. Mostly I have them because they're pretty, right? I'm like, ooh, pretty shiny rock, me. But we have labradorite. We have lapis lazuli, which is really nice. We have clear quartz, which is a really good crystal. It's almost like an everything crystal. It's really good at amplifying things. So we also have selenite, moonstone, which also really great crystal, and citrine. And these are just a couple of the crystals that you can use to help improve your intuition. And if you're looking for some herbs, right, we have mugwort, always a good one. We have lavender, which lavender is one of my favorites. We have yarrow, and we have frankincense, right? I do not recommend that you only use crystals or you only use herbs to try and strengthen your intuition. I always recommend that you do the meditations, you practice the mindfulness, you try and identify the emotions, because that will always help you. And if you become too dependent on the crystals or the herbs, then you're taking the power away from yourself. You're then relying on an outside source. And I want you to keep the power. I want you to not give away your own power and to give away your own abilities. So that is what I have to say about that.
It's time to answer some questions with beans. Let's get ready for it.
And now it's time for the question portions of everything. So this week's question was, what are your favorite tarot cards, right? And in general, I'm a fan of the queens. Specifically, the Queen of Pentacles and the Queen of Cups, right? The Queen of Pentacles is my self-nurturing card. It's like, okay, let's divert some energy into ourselves. Let's make sure we're nurturing ourselves. Let's make sure we're eating right, we're sleeping right. Let's take care of us, right? And the Queen of Cups is my self-worth card. It's like, know your worth, know your value. Don't let anyone treat you any which way. And I think these are just some great messages cards, because you always need that self-care. You always need to nurture you. And then self-worth is always important, right? We need to love ourselves. We need to appreciate ourselves enough to not just let anything and everything in. We need to be a little bit stingy with our energy and our time. So in general, these are some of my favorite cards. But if we're talking about in each deck that I own, in my Mystic Mondays deck, we have the Magician, right? And this just gives me very woman empowerment, right? Like, look at her. She is honing her energy. She's like, yes, I am magical. I can do the things that I want to do. I can create. I can manifest. And so I just love the woman-centered focus here. Woman being powerful. Woman being magical. Woman being able to create and manifest anything that they want to, right? So I love that. And then this one, it's backwards. This one, the Nine of Pentacles, in this card speaks of individuality, right? Like, usually this is an independence card. And in this deck, this is my card where it's like, just be you. Do the things that make you happy. Like, do you be authentically yourself, right? And don't let anything get in the way of that. This is almost like a let your free flag fly in a sense, right? But this is like, focus on you and your own thing and what makes you happy, and just work on yourself, right? So that's why I like this, because this speaks of individuality and you just being authentically yourself without any judgment. And then in my Tattoo Tarot deck, I love this one. And I love this one because it's just so gorgeous. Like, I would love to have this card tattooed on me. Like, she's gorgeous. She's beautiful. I don't know if you see the theme here, but I'm a woman lover, right? I'm a lover of the women's. And she's gorgeous, right? I want this tattooed on my body because it's amazing. So those are some of my favorite tarot cards throughout a couple of my decks. And that is what that is. I hope you enjoyed it. Before we end this podcast episode, I would like to just give a shout out to some of these amazing people that I think you should go support, follow. And I just think it's really important that we create a community. I just think community is so important. So, in an attempt to help create and nourish the community, I'm going to give you some people who are amazing at what they do. Number one is Bun Bun. They are an amazing tarot reader. They've been doing tarot for a lot longer than I have, 20 some odd years. They have a tarot teaching class. They're fairly newish on TikTok though. And they are always wearing these cute little bunny earrings, and I just think they're very kind, pure soul, and they have a lot of knowledge and experience that they want to share with everyone. So if you're like, I want to learn tarot, and I want to go with someone who has a lot of knowledge. They are someone who you can definitely learn something from. They have great interpretations of the tarot cards, and I love the way that they handle tarot, right? So definitely go follow them on TikTok, support them. They have tarot classes. Go look at their link tree. They're just so amazing. So do what you will with that one. And the other person is Megan. Now, she may not know I exist, and that's a-okay, right? But if you know anything about me, I'm not a medium. I don't do mediumship. She does do mediumship, and she is amazing at what she does, right? She's been doing mediumship for forever, if you ask me, and she's really good at it, right? She knows what she's talking about. She's really good at connecting with the spirits, giving those messages. She's very ethical, and she has a lot to teach, right? I want to say she does some classes, but don't take my word for that one. But if you're like, I have someone who I want to connect with who's passed on, I promise you, you will not be disappointed by her, because she does an amazing job and she's really good at what she does. What I will say though is she is a little bit on the pricier end, but she is worth every penny, every dollar, and she is so worth it, right? So if you're looking for someone who can do mediumship and do mediumship very well and who's been doing mediumship for a fairly good amount of time, look into her, right? And those are the people who I feel like deserve the shine today in the community. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I hope you've learned something. And I hope you guys have a beautiful, amazing rest of your week.